Hello and welcome to session 1.2 of Jesus and the Magic Money Tree. Promises, promises. What is money? In this session, we'll be looking at some different answers to that deceptively simple question. And alongside that, thinking about what money does. In the process, we'll begin to notice, I hope, some connections with session 1, which, you'll recall, was all about the nature of faith. Because, as we'll see, you can't tease out the meaning of money for too long before seeing that the vocabulary of faith, confidence, trust, belief, plays a major part in that. For example, what do you think was probably the earliest form of economic transaction? Was it barter, credit and debt, hire purchase, or coinage? The answer is credit and debt. Contrary to popular belief, barter, which is the simultaneous exchange of one item for another, is a recent invention. As anthropologist David Graeber puts it, we did not begin with barter, discover money, and then eventually develop credit systems. It happened precisely the other way around. Barter has mainly been what people who are used to cash transactions do when, for one reason or another, they have no access to currency. The Mesopotamian Code of Hammurabi from around 1750 BC shows that money was originally an accountancy system, created in order to keep track of resources and to record what was owed to whom. Although silver was held in the treasury, it seldom actually changed hands. In general, people ran up tabs denominated in silver, but settled up at harvest time not through payment in silver, but in barley or anything else which the creditor was willing to accept. This is an example of money as an IOU, the token of a social bond between creditor and debtor. These tokens need not have any intrinsic value, and this is the credit theory of money, according to which money is not itself wealth, but rather a claim on wealth, someone else's wealth. More recent examples include the various LETS, or local exchange and trading system schemes, which have sprung up spontaneously across the world. These local currencies, produced by communities rather than the government, are popular with people living in the same town or area who have limited access to the national currency. For example, when a major local employer closes down, or during a time of recession. Well-known recent UK examples include the Bristol and Lewis pounds, and various time banks, which enable people who are relatively money poor, but time rich, to exchange goods and services which otherwise they couldn't afford. While some have stressed the social nature of money, others have focused on what money can buy. So, according to the commodity theory of money, money represents the objective value of land, labour, and the processes of production. This has proved to be a very popular way of understanding money over the years, and even Adam Smith and Karl Marx agreed about this, wherever else they might have differed. And on this view, money is an intrinsically valuable commodity in and of itself. This is why coins made from rare metals such as silver and gold have so often been used as money, although the oldest coins known date from as recently as the 7th century BC. Of course, a gold coin isn't otherwise very useful. That's to say, you can't eat it, wear it, make a shelter out of it, and so on. But as money, it can be exchanged for other things which are useful, and it can be exchanged with anyone. including strangers or others you don't trust, unlike an IOU. According to the commodity theory of money, then, money represents the use value of other intrinsically useful things. Finally, money can also be seen as whatever the government will accept in payment of taxes. Rulers have always been short of cash, especially when it comes to funding military campaigns. In the past, they needed large amounts of cash in the form of coinage in order to pay their troops, who were often mercenaries. Precious metals in the treasuries of religious institutions, or cast as divine images, were often tempting sources of revenue. For example, that's why Harsa, who was king of Kashmir from 1089 to 1101, employed leprous monks to desecrate divine images with urine and excrement, before taking the images away to be melted down and made into coins. Another source of revenue for rulers is taxation. And whereas traditionally a local landowner might have accepted a proportion of his tenant's harvest as a tithe, a distant emperor might well prefer tribute in coinage. And this led conquerors to impose a cash economy on the inhabitants of conquered lands in order to expedite the payment of tax. According to the state theory of money, or chartalism, money is whatever the state will accept as a tax payment. Of course, the state need not require tax to be paid in metallic coins. It could choose anything it likes. It could, for example, print and distribute its own IOUs and insist that tax be paid with them. This is an example of a fiat money system, in which a government declares a particular currency not backed by any physical commodity to be legal tender. Since the most recent version of the international gold standard collapsed in 1971, fiat money has been the norm across the world. So, to sum up, what is money? Well, first, money is a way of connecting us to other people. As an IOU, it's a social bond of credit and debt between different members of society. Second, money is a way of connecting us to the world of stuff we need or just happen to want, like food, shelter, foreign holidays, visits to the cinema, a representation of any and every commodity. Finally, money is whatever the government will accept in settlement of a tax bill. Taken together, these three dimensions of money sum up human life pretty well, don't you think? Whoever and wherever we are, we're creatures with certain basic needs, living alongside others on whom we depend to access much of the stuff we need, and all the time also living within the hierarchical power structure, which provides some of the basic rules according to which our lives may be lived. Let's take a break at this point to look at the Bible. Have a look at Mark chapter 12, verses 13 to 17, and read it through a couple of times slowly and carefully. Then have a go at answering these two questions. What does Jesus have to say about money here in this passage? And bearing in mind the three aspects of money, as credit, commodity, and tax, what role does the denarius play in this exchange? Pause the presentation and do that now. Here's what one Bible commentator had to say about the context of this passage. When the Romans deposed Archelaus, the son of Herod, from his kingship in Judea and imposed direct rule from Rome, one of the most resented byproducts was the imposition of a poll tax on all adult Jewish males to be paid to the Roman state. Jesus' first move here is to ask them to show him a denarius, the Roman coin which was used for paying the poll tax. The silver denarius carried on it a portrait of the emperor and an inscription in which he was described as Son of God. Both the graven image and the wording were offensive to Jews, and the Romans, recognizing this, had sensibly arranged for copper coins to be minted for everyday use in Palestine, which had no such portrait. Yet, those who have come to Jesus with this political question can produce a denarius on the spot. Those words of Jesus about giving unto Caesar have generated a lot of debate over the years, and here's what another commentator has to say about them. First, give Caesar what belongs to Caesar can be taken, of course, as a way of saying, yes, pay the tax, but without the sting of, yes, submit to the Romans as your masters. The fact that Jesus had drawn attention to the blasphemous image and writing gives his command a flavor of, send this filthy stuff back where it came from. Second, though, it nicely echoes the Maccabean slogan, give the pagans back what they deserve, or if you like, pay the Gentiles back in their own coin. It could be taken as a coded revolutionary slogan, but doesn't leave Jesus open to a direct charge. And third, did he also mean that because humans bear God's image, all humans owe themselves, their very lives, to God, and should give those lives back, as one might give a coin back to Caesar? This story is an interesting illustration of chartalism, the state theory of money, whereby money is created and distributed by the state in order to recover it as tax. The introduction of the Roman denarius was simply a mechanism for exploiting taxpayers, using military force to compel people to convert their harvests, their means of life, into a form that would sustain and enrich imperial Rome. And this has been a common strategy of colonial powers across the ages. And this exchange shows how, in using money, we implicitly acknowledge some human authority. Jesus forces us to ask, therefore, does that fit with living under God's authority? So much for what money is. But what about what money does? Here again, there are three common answers offered to this question. First, money provides a means of exchange. One of money's basic functions is to provide a means of exchange, something a person will accept in return for goods and services. Basic requirements of such a means of exchange include portability and a sufficient supply to facilitate all the transactions people wish to make. Clamshells or wampum were used in North America as legal tender for payments of up to £2 between 1535 and 1661, although the last factory drilling shells and putting them on strings to be used as money didn't close until 1860. And again, pouches of mackerel or max are commonly used today in US prisons as informal money to pay for haircuts, to settle gambling debts, and so forth. Formerly, cigarettes had served this function, but apparently these were banned in 2004. And again, tobacco has served as legal tender in the past, specifically in Virginia and Maryland, for almost 200 years, and this was longer than the international gold standard lasted. Depositors were charged for keeping their tobacco money in warehouse banks, where it would deteriorate anyway, so encouraging people to spend it, or I suppose smoke it, rather than hoard it. Another form of money as a means of exchange has been poker chips, or to be more accurate, porcelain counters from local gambling houses, which were used as money in some cities in 19th century Siam. In one of these casinos, if it went bust, it would send a town crier around to announce that anyone holding its tokens had up to 3 days to redeem them. And finally, even disc-shaped stones known as fei have been used as currency in the Yap group of islands in the Central Pacific, and this was the case up until the 1960s. These were quarried on islands hundreds of miles away and shaped into different denominations, varying in size from a saucer to a millstone. Larger specimens, as we can see in this picture, had holes in the middle, through which poles could be inserted to help with moving them around. The second thing that money does is to provide a store of value. Silver and gold have been popular choices for coinage across history because they satisfy the second function of money, which is to be a store of value. Unlike the tobacco used in Virginia or the grain which was used in ancient Egypt, precious metals don't spoil. And this means that I can accumulate money over time, secure in the knowledge that I have only the thief and the taxman to fear. Of course, there's one other threat to the value of your savings, and that's death. One of Jesus' parables is about a wealthy landowner who enjoyed such a good harvest that he had to build more barns to accommodate it. His harvest was functioning as a store of value for him, provided he didn't keep it in storage too long, of course. But Jesus' point is that our ability to store value, to be lords of time, as it were, is always limited, one way or another. And thirdly, money provides a unit of account. Essentially, this is a bookkeeping device, enabling people to keep track of what's been bought and sold and who owes how much to whom. It also enables people to compare the relative value of two or more other items by providing a common yardstick against which they can all be measured. This is why Aristotle called money the middle term, for it measures all things. Money as unit of account therefore serves as an abstract general equivalent, and so in principle represents sheer quantity, a means of consistently comparing the relative value of a set of qualitatively different things, things which are as different as chalk and cheese. Because it's essentially an abstract quantity, absolutely anything can be used as a unit of account. For example, in the time of the Greek poet Homer, around the 8th century BC, a common unit of account was cattle. Now, there's no evidence that cattle actually changed hands, as for example did clamshells and tobacco in other cultures. That's to say, they didn't function as a means of exchange. They just provided the units in which accounts were kept. So let's sum up. Money does three hugely important things for us. It provides a means or medium of exchange, it provides a store of value, and it provides a unit of account. We'll take another break now to listen to an extract from Radio 4's Start the Week, which was broadcast back in 2012. It's an interview between the host, Andrew Marr, and Philip Coggan of The Economist. In this, they'll be discussing two of the functions of money which we've just been looking at, and bringing out a certain tension which exists between these functions. The interview takes up the first 8 minutes of the programme. By all means, listen to the whole programme if you wish, or you might want to go back and listen to the rest some other time. So please pause the presentation here and listen to the clip now. Money has to be two very, very different things at the same time. Let's take a moment to register just a few of the points made by Philip Coggan during that conversation. First of all, Coggan's basic thesis was that there's a fundamental tension between money's functions as a means of exchange on the one hand and a store of value on the other. Its role as a means of exchange is favoured by borrowers, those who are in debt. In order to pay back the debts, they want to have as much money as possible circulating in the economy, and so will push for more money to be created. Other factors being equal, if you print more money, then the value of that money, its buying power, will decrease. That means, in fact, that the real size of any debts decreases too. On the other hand, lenders, those to whom money is owed, tend to favour money's role as a store of value. When they eventually get their money back, they want its buying power to be at least as great as it was when they lent it in the first place. So lenders or creditors will want to restrict the money supply. They don't want their money to lose value. Borrowers or debtors will want exactly the opposite, to expand the money supply. And Coggan observed that in the US today, the voice of creditors is heard loudly among the Tea Party movement, while the financial sector, symbolized by Wall Street, currently represents the voice of debtors. And what's happened in many developed Western countries over recent years is that we've created more claims on wealth than we have wealth itself. That's the problem. Remember that according to the credit theory of money, money is essentially a claim on the wealth of others, rather than being wealth in and of itself. In any event, says Coggan, this excess of claims on wealth over wealth itself may be okay in a growing economy, but our economy and our population levels are stagnating. And on top of that, we as a country, as corporations, and as households are already carrying a massive burden of apparently unpayable debt. And notice the word confidence here. When, for example, building societies traditionally offered you a mortgage, it was on the assumption that your income stream was reliable and would grow. And when confidence about that income stream dries up, so does the lending. So, says Coggan, in a nutshell, we're not going to pay these debts back. It just ain't going to happen. What will happen instead? Well, maybe default. The debtor just walks away and the creditor's asset disappears, which, by the way, would be bad news for anyone hoping to draw down a pension one day, as pension funds have big stakes in assets like these. If not default, then inflation. Money is allowed to slowly lose its value, its buying power, which means that the real size of any given debt slowly reduces over time. Again, not good news for creditors. One way or another, something negative will happen. In summary then, looking back over this second session, what have we learned? Well, there are three ways of understanding what money is. A commodity, representing the value of other useful things. A relationship of credit and debt between people. Whatever the government will accept as tax. And money does three different things. It acts as a means or medium of exchange. It provides a store of value. It provides a unit of account. And we've learned that a single money system can struggle to do all these three things well at once. There's a tension there. So join me again for session 1.3 of Jesus and the Magic Money Tree. Borrowing from the future. Where does money come from? Having thought about what money is and what it does, we'll be taking the story a step further by looking at where and how it originates and coming to some rather startling conclusions.